I was lying in a hospital bed, bleeding from a car crash, waiting for my father to show up. But when he finally answered the phone, he asked if I was dying, and then he said he couldn't come because my sister had a bad job interview and needed him more. That's when I realized something brutal. I wasn't the daughter. I was the backup plan, the strong one, the one they forgot until they needed bailing out. But this time, I wasn't going to be the quiet one anymore. This time, I made a different kind of call, to a lawyer. And that one call changed everything. The antiseptic burned my nose long before the pain meds kicked in. I remember the ceiling tiles above me, fluorescent, humming, too white to feel real. My body was broken, but it was my chest that hurt the most. Not from the cracked rib or the fractured femur, but from the sound of my father's voice as he hung up on me. "Don't make this into a thing, Madison. Tessa's spiraling right now. You're not dying." The words hit harder than the car that blindsided me at the intersection off Market and 42nd. The driver had been texting. I had the right of way. It didn't matter. 1 second I was crossing the street with Thai takeout in my hands. The next I was weightless, then heavy, then nothing. When I opened my eyes, the sky was gone, replaced by a paramedic's face and the overwhelming stench of my own blood. I remember them saying compound fracture and possible internal bleeding. I remember nodding, or thinking I did, then black. At the hospital, everything felt slowed down, like grief underwater. The nurses cut through my jeans with sterile scissors, placed IVs, asked for emergency contact info, and I said, "My dad." Because even after everything, even after years of being second place to my younger sisters, every meltdown, mistake, and drama, I still thought he'd come. I reached for my phone. It was cracked, just like me. The first call went to voicemail, the second rang twice and died, the third he picked up. "Yeah?" I could already hear the edge in his voice. "Dad, it's me. I'm at Mount Mercy. I was hit by a car. They think my leg is broken, possibly more." There was a pause, then a sigh. "Jesus, Madison. I'm in the middle of something. Tessa just bombed her interview and she's having a full breakdown. I'm trying to keep her grounded right now. You're okay, right? You're not dead. Don't panic. She really needs support." And then, click, he hung up. Just like that. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then stared at the ceiling again. I could still feel the phone in my hand, but not my toes. And for the first time that night, it wasn't the pain in my body that made me tremble. It was the realization that I was completely, utterly alone. I had spent a lifetime being the strong one, the responsible one, the one who never needed babysitting. That's what he called it when he missed my graduation because Tessa had a panic attack over a B-. You understand, right, Mads? She just needed me that day. I understood. I always did. And that's why I was here, bleeding into a sterile mattress, nurses checking my vitals every 10 minutes, my body swollen with pain, and still, I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because crying would feel like admitting I expected something more. I didn't, until I did. Until I made that call and heard his voice, and realized how easily he had replaced concern with obligation, how quickly he chose Tessa's anxiety over my shattered bones. And maybe, just maybe, this time, it would be the last time I'd let him do it. When I was 10, I figured out that the fastest way to get my dad's attention was to disappear. Not literally, just quietly enough that no one had to worry about me. No mess, no fuss, no drama, just good grades, packed lunches, and a room that cleaned itself. While Tessa screamed about the color of her birthday balloons, I learned how to make boxed mac and cheese without burning it. While she cried over a broken nail, I was learning how to change the oil in Mom's old Subaru before it got repossessed. Everyone called it maturity, independence, responsibility, but it was survival, camouflage. Dad would always say things like, "Madison's solid, we don't have to worry about her." And that was the problem, wasn't it? They didn't worry, not when I worked through 2 part-time jobs in college, not when I missed Thanksgiving because I couldn't afford the flight home, not when my car broke down on the side of Highway 5 in the middle of summer and I walked 3 miles to a gas station. I was the strong one. And strong people don't need help. They give it. I remember the first time Tessa overdrafted her checking account. Dad wired her $500 within the hour. She got a lecture, sure, but it came with a dinner reservation and a pep talk. When I brought up that I was 2 months behind on rent because my roommate bailed and I had covered the lease, he told me to budget smarter. I didn't ask again. Instead, I started sending money, quietly. When Tessa's anxiety flared and she couldn't handle living alone, I co-signed her lease and paid the first month's rent. When her therapist bill hit $2,200 and Dad said he was tapped this month, I Venmo'd her the full amount. Just until she got on her feet. Except she never did. And I never stopped paying. Because I had been trained, conditioned, to believe that love was something you earned. That being dependable meant being selfless. that the strongest person in the room was the one holding everyone else up, even if it meant their own legs were shaking. It never occurred to me to say no, until the hospital, until that night. I lay there, numb from morphine and disbelief, scrolling through years of PayPal receipts, old texts that began with "sorry to ask again," and ended with "just don't tell Dad." I had footed more bills than I could count: therapy, groceries, rent. I even paid her phone bill for 6 months without her ever saying thank you. But she always said, "You're amazing. I don't know what I'd do without you." And that's how I stayed in it. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, that's what closeness looked like. Being needed. Even if it bled me dry. But now, with my leg in a cast and a fresh line of stitches hugging my ribs, I finally saw it for what it was. Not gratitude, not family. Dependency. And the worst part? I trained them to depend on me. Every time I said yes. Every time I sent money. Every time I swallowed my hurt because she's just more sensitive or he has enough on his plate. I taught them that I didn't need anything. And so, they gave me nothing. The hallway outside the trauma unit was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe but echoes. Machines beeped steadily beside me, monitoring vitals, but my mind was racing like a runaway train. And in that stillness, I reached for something I hadn't touched in years: control. Not comfort, not forgiveness, control. My phone trembled in my hand, not from the pain meds or the bruises, but from the weight of a decision I should have made long ago. I didn't scroll to my father. I didn't dial Tessa. Instead, I searched for the name I'd saved under just in case. Laura Finn, attorney at law, landlord disputes, small claims. And once, when I was 22, she helped me fight back against a landlord who tried to keep my deposit. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't dramatic, but she was the first adult who ever looked at me and said, "You don't have to take this." So I called her. She answered on the second ring. "Madison," she said, voice calm, almost soft. I didn't cry. I expected to, but I didn't. "I'm in the hospital," I said, "hit by a car. I'm okay, but I need help." There was a pause, then she asked, "Legal help?" "Yes," I said, more certain than I expected. "I want to cut them off. My father, my sister. I want them out of everything: finances, emergency contacts, power of attorney, all of it." She didn't gasp. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Do you have documentation?" And God help me, I did. Bank transfers, emails, texts. I had started saving them 6 months ago without knowing why. Like a quiet part of me was preparing for this moment, even when the rest of me was still in denial. "Good," she said. "That helps. I'll be at the hospital in the morning." "Really?" "Of course," she said. "You don't have to do this alone, Madison." When the call ended, I sank back into the pillows. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear. It was relief. For the first time, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I wasn't begging for love in the form of recognition. I wasn't performing strength for an audience that clapped louder for my sister's breakdowns than my quiet resilience. I had made a choice to protect myself. Not from strangers, but from family. From people who had weaponized my silence, who had called me strong so they didn't have to care. Laura showed up the next morning just as sunlight slipped through the window blinds. She wore a sharp navy suit, no makeup, hair pulled into a clean knot. Professional, unfazed, like she'd done this 100 times. She set her briefcase down, pulled up a chair beside my hospital bed, and opened her laptop. "You ready?" she asked, voice low. I nodded. She didn't need to yell to be powerful. She didn't need to lecture to be respected. She simply showed up, calm, prepared, on my side. And in that moment, I realized something. I'd spent a lifetime giving everything to people who only showed up when I was useful. Laura showed up when I was broken. That's what real support sounds like. It doesn't scream. It doesn't blame. It simply says, "I'm here, let's begin." The door creaked open at exactly 4:47 p.m. It wasn't a nurse. It was my father, Robert Blake, in his rumpled blazer and loosened tie, trying to look concerned but forgetting that I knew all his expressions too well. Concern had never looked this rehearsed. And trailing behind him, of course, was Tessa, oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, arms crossed, her mouth tight like she was already preparing her defense. But what neither of them expected was Laura Finn. She stood beside my bed like a sentry, laptop closed, folder in hand. Her calm presence sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Dad froze. "Who's this?" he demanded, gesturing toward Laura with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. Laura answered smoothly, "I'm Madison's attorney." Tessa scoffed. "Seriously, an attorney? Are we doing this?" I sat up straighter, ignoring the sting in my ribs. My voice came out flat and steady. "Sit down if you want to talk, otherwise there's the door." Dad's jaw twitched. "Mads, come on. This is about the call. You can't be serious. You weren't dying. Tessa was having a breakdown." "Over a job rejection," I said coldly, while I was being prepped for surgery. Tessa's mouth opened. I was having a panic attack. You were disappointed, I snapped. I was bleeding. My father raised his voice, falling into the rhythm I knew too well. You always turn everything into a crisis. You exaggerate. You twist things. There it was. That familiar line. That gaslight in a matchbox. I turned to Laura. Would you play it? She nodded, tapped her phone. The room filled with the sharp echo of his voice. Don't make a fuss, Madison. You're not dying. Tessa needs support urgently. Don't call in a panic. Then came Tessa's voice, faint but clear. Can't you see I'm spiraling? Stop making this about you. And then silence. Heavy, blistering, undeniable. Dad turned pale. Tessa blinked fast. You recorded us? He growled. Yes, I said, because I knew you'd rewrite it. He stepped forward. This is insane. You've lost your mind. No, I said quietly. I finally found it. Laura unfolded the documents with the grace of a courtroom ballerina. As of today, Madison Blake has formally revoked all legal and financial ties to both of you. This includes power of attorney, joint account access, and any inheritance designations. Dad reached for the papers like he could rip them apart and undo time. You can't do this. She already has, Laura replied with steel under silk. Tessa stepped closer. But I need help. I'm job hunting. I can't move back in with Mom. That place is toxic. That's not my problem anymore, I said, my voice sharper than glass. You've had years of lifelines. I was the one in crisis this time, and you still made it about you. Dad's voice rose. We're family. No, I said, we're blood. That's not the same thing. He glared at me, fists clenched. After everything I've done for you, braces, summer camp, every dime into raising you, and this is how you repay me? I didn't flinch. You raised me to be responsible, so I could fund your irresponsibility. That's not parenting, that's exploitation. They didn't argue after that. They just stood there, stunned, cornered by a version of me they'd never cared to know. Laura opened the door with a gentle nod. No drama, no screaming. They walked out, not with a bang, but with the cold, clean sound of defeat. The kind that only happens when the script finally flips. And the strong one stops playing along. The door had barely clicked shut when the silence came crashing in. Not the hollow, aching kind that haunted me as a child. Not the tense stillness after another family blow-up. This silence was different. It was earned. It was mine. Laura sat down again, refolding the documents into her leather case with practiced calm. They'll push back, she said, eyes steady on mine. Maybe not here, but they will, emotionally, publicly, privately. I nodded even as the weight settled deeper in my chest. I know. And she was right. They didn't wait long. That night, as the morphine faded and the IV beeped in quiet rhythm beside me, my phone lit up with the first message. Tessa, I can't believe you ambushed us like that. You've always been jealous of me, admit it. 2 minutes later, you're not a victim. You just finally found a way to make everything about you. Then came Dad. After all I've done for you, this is your response? We gave you everything. Braces, camps, a roof. You're ungrateful. Each notification was a tiny match struck in the dark, flickering, loud, and desperate to ignite something inside me. But I didn't burn this time. I muted them. Every number, every app, every thread. And then I exhaled. Laura had told me something earlier, just after they left. Let your silence speak louder than any defense. Let your boundaries do the talking. So I let the phone buzz itself into irrelevance. I didn't engage. I didn't correct. I didn't explain. Because I had spent my entire life trying to explain, to justify, to soften, to understand them when they never tried to understand me. Not anymore. 2 days after I was discharged, I hobbled into my small apartment, crutches under both arms, and found a package of groceries on my doorstep. No note, just organic soup, bread, juice, and a single daisy in a bottle. Emily, a coworker from accounting. She hadn't asked, she hadn't texted. She had just shown up. Later that night, my cousin Jenna messaged me. I saw the Facebook post your dad made. That wasn't okay. Just wanted to say, I believe you. I always saw how different he treated you. Tessa was the storm. You were expected to be the umbrella. I broke down crying, not because it hurt, but because someone finally saw me, without me having to explain myself. Then came Nora, my college roommate, now a trauma counselor. She texted just 3 words. You don't owe anyone your survival. And those words cracked something open. Because that's what I'd been doing all along. Surviving. Performing strength, making myself easy, swallowing pain so others didn't have to see it. But not anymore. I went back to therapy. This time not to fix myself, but to unlearn the belief that love must be earned through suffering. My therapist said something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. You weren't loved for who you were. You were rewarded for what you gave. It hit like thunder. Sudden, loud, final. That night, I updated my emergency contacts. Opened a new savings account under my name only. blocked my father and sister on every platform. And no, there was no rage behind it. Just peace. The kind that follows a storm strong enough to tear down everything that was never real to begin with. 3 months after the accident, the cast came off. My leg was thin, pale, stiff like a stranger's. It ached when it rained and trembled when I walked too far. But it held me, it carried me, just like I was finally learning to carry myself. The physical healing was measurable: x-rays, physical therapy milestones, pain levels from 1 to 10. But the other wounds, the ones left by a father's indifference and a sister's entitlement, those didn't show up in scans. They lived in the quiet. The kind of quiet I'd once feared, and now cherished. Because in that quiet, I started building a life that was mine. I cooked dinners, for one, and didn't feel empty. I walked alone in the early evenings, no music, no noise, and didn't feel lost. I laughed, not because someone needed me to stay strong, but because I felt light enough to laugh. I changed my mailing address. I closed the joint account my father once insisted on, just for emergencies. I deleted my old emergency contact and added Nora, then Emily, then myself. But the final piece, the real act of shedding, came in the form of a signature. At the county courthouse, I stood in front of a clerk with a clipboard and a neutral expression. "Reason for name change?" she asked. I paused, then smiled. "Because I want it to reflect the person I've become, not the one I had to be." She nodded. "What's the new last name?" "Brooks," I said. No hyphen, no remnants, just mine. She stamped the form with a dull thud that sounded more final than any argument I'd ever had with my father. Madison Brooks. I didn't choose it to erase the past. I chose it to stop letting the past define me. Robert Blake and Tessa still tried for a while. Emails, guilt trips, thinly veiled posts about ungrateful daughters and family loyalty. I didn't reply. I didn't justify. I didn't engage. Laura handled everything on my behalf, even the final set of legal notices. I never heard "I'm sorry," not once. But I stopped needing it. Because what they withheld, love, respect, apology, was no longer the currency I valued. I stopped chasing closure and started choosing peace. And something beautiful happened. The right people stayed. Jenna sent me a handwritten card that simply said, "Proud of you." Emily dropped off banana bread when I got back from physical therapy. No explanation, just kindness. Nora came with a bottle of wine and said, "To the name that fits your soul." And for the first time in my life, I felt whole. Not because someone finally saw me, but because I finally saw myself. There's a myth that family is everything. But here's the truth no one tells you. Family is not blood. Family is who comes when the lights go out, who believes your pain without proof, who never makes you apologize for needing them. So to anyone still begging a parent to notice you, still trying to earn love through sacrifice, hear this. You don't have to bleed to be worthy. You don't have to stay to be good. You are already enough. And the day you stop asking to be seen is the day you finally become visible. They called it love when I made myself small, when I paid quietly, stayed quiet, and never asked for anything back. But real love doesn't demand your silence. It doesn't make you bleed just to be seen. I changed my last name not because I hated where I came from, but because I finally knew where I was going. So if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, let me be proof that you can walk away, that you can choose yourself, that you can build a life without begging to belong. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone. You already have it. And the day you stop asking to be loved is the day you start living in freedom.